Welcome to another episode of BHP Book Club. I am your host, Kelly Morgan. Today, I'm sitting down and speaking with author Alyssa Couture. Alyssa has written a book called Healthy Fashion, The Deeper Truth, and she will definitely have you look at fashion in a different way. She talks about fashion for the mind, body, and spirit, and fashion as modern medicine and as a health practice. I really enjoyed speaking with her. I think her ideas and her viewpoint and perspective are unique. I can't wait for you to meet her, so why wait? Welcome to the podcast, our newest member, fashion author, Alyssa Couture. Alyssa, thank you so much for being a part of the book club and coming on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You know, I'm excited to talk with you about your book. You know, it's a fashion book, but it's a different spin on fashion. And we'll get into that in a moment, but I'm more interested in your writing journey. So how did this book become a book?
Well, I actually started out designing and drawing fashion illustrations at a young age. And then I ventured into fashion design school in my teen years. And I have had a long career in fashion retail management, styling, and I've also done some entrepreneurial works like handmade fashion brand. I've had a fashion news media site, and I've delved into eco-fashion journalism. And along the way, I have also had a strong spiritual background. So I kind of have lived and worked, I have lived and worked in ashrams and monasteries for quite some time, on and off throughout my life. And that kind of launched the sort of spiritual, metaphysical, alternative health aspect of the fashion book. And when I was working at a monastery in Highview, West Virginia, the head monk, Bhante Gunaratana, I ended up finding out he is a famous author, and he wrote many books on spiritual meditation and Buddhism. And it really inspired me because a year earlier, before I had started living at the monastery, I was working in retail, and I said, I have to write a book. And it took a year from that point when I had remembered and recalled that I even wanted to write a book. So when I was at the monastery, I was cooking and I was the kitchen manager, and I ended up buying a notebook. And so I went to Walmart, I bought a notebook, and I started writing fashion notes. And this was the initial beginning of my journey in writing. And I really had a passion for writing this book. Even back in 2016 was when I really wanted to write a book. And then in 2018, I started it. And then it took a few years to launch. And so when I was at the monastery, I ended up not having enough time to write. So I moved to Mount Shasta, California, and I went to this spiritual vortex called Mount Shasta. It's a volcano mountain. It's a sacred site. It's one of the most tourist visited places in California. And I had a certain amount of spiritual awakenings, and I believe it is part of the spiritual ascension on Earth, the planetary awakening, the evolution, because the fashion work that I wrote was really about the evolution of fashion. So I kind of tied this in when I was practicing yoga, sort of connecting with my spirit. I realized I wanted to write this book more and more. So I dug in and I completed the book after a few years. The publisher that I had found is John Hunt Publishing. I have a traditional contract with John Hunt Publishing, a large UK-based publisher, and they're also based in Washington, D.C. And it's just been quite a journey here. I've taken some time to reflect, and I feel that it's a promising book with a great mission and vision, and I'm just a fashion advocate. I'm here to pass along the information, both the knowledge and wisdom that I've learned and experienced, and it's a great thing.
So the first thing that comes to mind when I listen to you talk is, give me your definition of fashion.
Okay. So I believe fashion is multidimensional. It is something that we wear that protects us, but it also is a healing modality. It's a tool. It's something that we can use to activate our consciousness more and more. And we do this already. But through my work, I find that when you're on the fashion journey and the process of sort of evolving your wardrobe, we can have this deeper, sacred connection to fashion more and more when we learn and discover more about it. So with the deeper truth of fashion, I have included concepts that are sort of creating a new perception of fashion, a new approach. Fashion that can treat the body medicinally, but it also can be used, I would even go as far as to say supernaturally. A fashion that can really create our identity, but also be a universal language, something that we can communicate together on a deeper way. So it's all about fashion evolution in the fashion industry in the past, in the present, in the future. And when you had initially asked me, what does fashion mean to me? It's actually a very profound question, and it's something that's very complex, something that I can't really answer completely and fully. But from my understanding, I do believe fashion is a multidimensional tool, a healing modality that we can use in order to develop and activate conscious enlightenment and conscious awareness.
Fantastic. So tell me about the book. Is the book more of a self-help book? Is it more of an information book? Is it a fashion book? Help me. I'm trying to wrap my head around the concept that you're talking about. So help me by breaking it down into smaller pieces. Maybe that will help me. Does that make sense?
Well, no, you've really nailed it. Hybrid. It's a hybrid book. I have researched the bookstores carrying the book, and there's dozens of them. It's online at this point. And when I looked at where they were categorizing the book, all over the map, I've seen the book categorized under fashion. I've seen the book categorized under health and wellness. I've seen it categorized under self-help, as well as new age, psychology, you name it. This book is under all of these categories. So I consider this book a hybrid. As much as it's devoted to fashion, it really taps into all of these different aspects and all of these different topics. It really generates a wide spectrum. So I think I've sort of tried to explain it to you. It's really a very wide-spoken book on numerous topics, and we can relate it to all of these categories because there's so much involved. There's so much information involved with all of these categories. So it is a little bit challenging to market, to be honest, because I find that it taps into so many different subjects and so many different categories.
Can you give us some of the concepts that are in the book?
Yes. So there's the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and energetic aspects of fashion in relation to our 5 bodies. And one aspect of the physical body addressed in relation to fashion is plant-based fashion, and I call it plant tech fashion. There's a glossary of over 35 different types of plants that we can develop more and more using advanced textile machinery. Plants from all over the world, the Philippines, Europe, North America, and whatnot. And these plants are going to be able to take over the domination of the polyester plastic material that we have for our fibers. Another different concept I've addressed in the book, which goes in a complete different direction, is the mental body and how our mental health is connected to fashion. And this being the fashion archetypes versus the fashion stereotypes. So right now in the fashion marketing industry, we relate to fashion typically on a stereotypical level. We see fashion, we say, oh, he's a jock. We see fashion outfits, we say, oh, he's a homeless person, or oh, she's a cheerleader, oh, he's a clown. We have these stereotypes of fashion, but when I have looked up the Jungian archetypes, excuse me, I'll pronounce his name incorrectly. This is the way I like to say his name. The Jungian archetypes are like the hero, the adventurer, the innocent. And so instead of perceiving someone as an athlete, we can perceive them as the archetype of the adventurer or the jock. So we're kind of bringing fashion into a deeper level. We're seeing clothing in a way that feel like we're honoring and respecting the person. Because I know oftentimes if I see a bohemian outfit and I say, oh, that person's a hippie, instead of calling that person a hippie, which is in some ways it can be derogatory, because hippie can come up with all types of conclusions about what a hippie means to a person. Instead of looking at the outfit and saying, okay, that person is a hippie, we can say, oh, that person is embracing the innocent archetype, the innocence, the purity, the lightheartedness. So I find using the archetypes in fashion is going to be an incredible topic moving forward. And even in the fashion market industry, when we kind of get closer to our clothes and we have a deeper communication with how we perceive clothing and how people perceive our own clothing. And other topics that I've addressed is also the spiritual awakening on Earth. I've concluded that there's a specific type of fashion that is ego and superficial, and it could also go as far as to say that the clothing could be evil or occult. And then there's this other side of fashion that is divine and pure and healing, and it taps into all sorts of sacred ancient ways of dressing that means a soulful way of being, like a sacred divine sense of a wardrobe. So I have information on healthy fashion versus healthy fashion, and it kind of helps, I think, us sort of go through the puzzle pieces of what we're dealing with in this society. We have some people wearing costume, and some people are wearing fashion in all different levels and experiences. So I do also dabble in universal fashion that speaks to all of us. Forget this cultural appropriation of fashion that segregates. I find that there's a remedy and a way of dressing in fashion and designing and producing fashion that can modernize the planet. It can modernize our culture and our ecosystem and our social economy and whatnot. So I have many different concepts. It's a bit of a dabbler, this book, and it reaches lots of different points of views. And I think that's what makes the book special, is because there's many different ideas and many different points that I address. And so it's not just focused on one direction of fashion, but more of a multi-dimensional perspective.
Do you think that fashion today, when you were talking about fashion being, I guess, good or evil. Like, what do you mean by that? Is fashion today good or bad, or good or evil, or how do you know? How do you know when you're just out buying clothes, like what would be perceived as good and what would be perceived as not good?
Okay, and that's a great question, and I have thought of this very in-depthly. And part of it, we can talk about fashion that is bad or evil in many different perspectives, but one approach is the vibration and the energy of the fabric. In India, they have a term sattvic versus tamasic, and sattvic is pure vibration, is tamasic is toxic, and a science research center has concluded that cotton, the plant, is sattvic because of the vibration energetically, and polyester, because it has so many toxins and chemicals and combinations of chemicals that really react in a wrong negative way, and it's slightly acidic because it's a fossil petroleum based solution. That's creating a sort of a negative vibration. And I still wear polyester. I think the whole world does, unless you're living in the tropics, because we don't really have those options of 100% plant-based wardrobe. But it's something to consider. Wearing more plants, because of the vibration is more positive. The vibration of the polyester is a bit negative, and like I said, those terms can be a little bit confusing and misperceived. But moving on, I also wanted to tell you, when I talk about evil clothing, there's been a sacrifice of fashion, sacrificial fashion that actually hurts the body, fashion that's not comfortable. I had bad clothes in my life, especially working in retail where I was in the public a lot, so I had to sort of dress in skirts and blouses and whatnot. And I noticed that a lot of times I was pulling at my garments, and the garments were itching me, and they were scratching me, and they were doing things to my body that was just not fun. So we can even just perceive it as good fashion being comfortable fashion that's ergonomic and functional and designing correctly for the body, movement-inspired fashion that can really bring the body into a state of healing and, just feeling well. And another aspect of fashion that is, good versus bad is just the ego of fashion. When we look at dress, whatever is sacred to us is what's most important. But when we look at some garments and outfits, especially in fashion marketing, it's very seductive. There's a greed and possible a lust vibration to it. There's just a lot of just kind of misguided perception. And when we decorate our body and adorn our body, it's for protection. And part of fashion can be able to manipulate. We can manipulate others by the way we dress. So I find that, that tactic, that way of communicating with people through dress could be, not good for us and not the best way to dress. So there's lots of different reasons to make fashion good and to make fashion bad. And, I only tap into it. I do actually talk about it quite thoroughly in the book. But it is always so open to perspective. Your experience is completely unique to mine. Of course, I'm sure we have a lot of relatable experiences in life. But what I have tried to do in my research and my work and writing is when I write something, it's open to perspective and it's going to trigger your own life experiences and your own thoughts, ways of thinking, so that you will understand and look at it in your own unique, special way, and it makes sense to you in that way, and it's perfect. That's the way it's supposed to be, I believe.
Yeah, I would agree with you. When you were talking about evil fashion and pulling and tugging at your clothes, the first thing that popped into my mind was pantyhose. That pantyhose was evil fashion, which is why it's probably not as popular anymore. That's the first thing that popped into my mind. I thought, yeah, that was kind of very uncomfortable, bad fashion. So this book, you've got this wonderful book on fashion and just such a different perspective. Are you working on anything else? Are you going to be, is this your first book?
Well, this is my first book, yes. And I had actually a psychic. I don't know if he mind read me, but there's 2 more books coming. There'll be a second book on the way, but it's not, it's in the works. It's on the note stage. And my second book it's not necessarily going to be a sequel, but it's definitely going to be in relation to the first book. Yet it's not a completely different concept, but it is a new concept. And I have that brewing. I have that going. I figured that out this past year while I was traveling to different sites, sacred vortexes and sites, and connecting with nature. I kind of just came up with the plan, and it's definitely a collective energy of my own interests. I do have a blog on my website. I have a free resources page with printables and worksheets that I kind of gather together at times. And I also have a strong social media campaign with YouTube and Instagram. So I kind of dabble in my healthy fashion campaign, which is sort of teaching and educating and discussing topics in relation to fashion for health, fashion for well-being and healing. And so I'm working on that. I'm also working on probably putting together a consultation package where I can be approached by fashion consumers and fashion professionals who are interested in just speaking with me in regards to helping them with solving solutions for their business or their wardrobes. But yes, right now I'm taking the time to really push the boundaries with this book and in the marketing stage, and really trying to get it exposed, because it's such a new topic. As you had agreed, you had said that it's a very new topic, and I get that a lot. I get it a lot. I get it all the time, and I find that it's an exciting topic. It's an exciting time to be here on this, discuss this new approach to fashion, because I think it's going to relieve us of a lot of possible unconscious pain and suffering, because as we evolve, and every single industry needs to level up. I mean, if you look at the cars now, they're doing the electric hybrid vehicles and the solar panels and all of that. So in every industry, we are kind of rising together. And with this new approach with fashion, when I was first starting out in my career, I was working on projects with eco-fashion, sustainable fashion, but I really just knew I had to push the envelope with fashion to heal the body, because as we heal the body, it actually extends itself outward and naturally heals the environment.
Yeah, it is such a different approach to fashion, probably not what most people are expecting. So, Alyssa, tell me the name of the book again.
The book is called Healthy Fashion, The Deeper Truths, and it is released December 1st, 2021, and it is available in Amazon, Barnes & Noble, IndieBound, and I found it in dozens of countries worldwide, which is very exciting.
Are there any plans for an audiobook?
I hope so. And I'll be looking into that. I believe that it's going to be converted into an audiobook. I'm just not positive.
Fantastic. Alyssa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing, I would have to say, a very unique perspective on fashion. You're starting to make me think about clothes in a whole different way that I never really thought about before. And that, I think, is fantastic.
Thank you so much. And I do appreciate you having me on the show. And it's so inspiring to me when I find individuals like yourself, respectable podcast hosts that can really picture the idea and the concept so vividly. So it really helps me, because as I find people, meet people like you, friendly people like you, it's going to, I believe, be sort of like a ripple effect in the ocean. When everyone kind of is a piece of this vision idea, it's really going to support the whole concept in general.
Well, it definitely makes you stop and think about fashion in a whole different way, rather than just seeing it as a piece of clothing on the rack or on a hanger. You're now you have a different perspective. As you said, you've taken it to a deeper level. And I like how you said the industry has to level up. So definitely thank you so much, Alyssa. It has been a pleasure having you on the podcast.
No, thank you so much, Kelly. It's been a pleasure as well.
Thank you for listening to another episode of BHP Book Club. I am your host, Kelly Morgan. I just wrapped up with author Alyssa Couture and her book titled Healthy Fashion, A Deeper Truth. You can learn more about Alyssa and her healthy fashion campaign at www.hfcampaign.com. That's www.h as in Henry, F as in Frank, campaign.com. And the book is called, once again, Healthy Fashion, The Deeper Truth. I really enjoyed speaking with her and wish her all the luck on her book. If you are an author and you are interested in being a member of the book club and promoting your book, I say this pretty much every single time, and I'll keep saying it. It's real simple. You just go to my website, which is brightheadedpublishing.com, brightheadedpublishing.com. Go to the contact page, drop me a note. I'll get back with you. Next thing you know, you're the newest member to our ever-growing book club, talking about your book and sharing your experience and your stories with all of us. Thank you so much for listening. I know I've said it before, there's so many podcasts out there, so I'm truly grateful that you have chosen to spend your time with me here today. Next week, I'll bring you another author, but until then, keep writing.